Okay, picking up where we left off on Friday. Should be Browning's My Last Duchess, page 726, around line 34, 33, something like that. The speaker's talking about his last Duchess and mentions his gift of a 900 years old name and how his last Duchess thanked or ranked his gift of a 900 years old name with anybody's gift. Who'd stoop to blame this sort of trifling, he says. What's it mean to stoop? Who'd stoop to blame? It means you bow down, you lower yourself. Okay, so if you're lowering yourself to what? To what purpose? Here, it's to her. Okay, but lowering yourself implies what about you with, in this instance, the other person? Keep going.
Superior.
Yeah, he's superior to her. And if you have to stoop, then you are, to use the Latin phrase, you're condescending to them. You're descending together down to that person's level. Who'd stoop to blame this sort of trifling? Notice what he says about his complaints. They're trifles. His complaints are about what? She smiles at, we've been told, everything. His gift of a 900 years old name, his favor at her breast, the sun declining in the west, the bowl of cherries, the riding around on the white donkey. Even had you skill in speech, which I have not, to make your will quite clear to such a one, and say just this or that, and you discuss me, here you miss or there exceed the mark. And if she let herself be less than so, nor plainly set her wits to yours, forsooth, and made excuse. So all that is what? Okay, so assume for a moment, I do stoop to blame, or I do stoop to try to teach her, okay, about this. Say, this behavior really disgusts me, but you do really well over here, so praise and blame. And if she let herself be less than so, that kind of implies maybe she doesn't. He says, even then would be some stooping, and I choose never to stoop. Why? Why won't he stoop to her level? If you're talking with a little kid, what's the best way to reach that little kid? You get down on their level so that they're not looking up, but face to face. Okay? When I used to coach soccer, I would often try to remember, I didn't always, especially when I was angry, get down on my knees so that they're looking at me like this. Okay? But he chooses never to stoop. Why? He's told us something already, and I think that's the indication why. He has a 900-year-old name. We don't have anybody in the United States with a 900-year, I take that back. There are lots of people with 900-year-old names. Families that, do genealogy and all that kind of stuff. My brothers traced our family literally back to the 900s, okay? On various sides, etc. Not the last name Sherman. Other names that go all the way back. He's talking about like Rothschild that goes, okay? I choose never to stoop. Oh, she smiled. No doubt, whene'er I passed her. In other words, don't get me wrong. It's not like she gave me the bird as I walked past. She smiled. But who passed without much the same smile? Remember I said in a dramatic monologue, the speaker, the person doing the monologue, thing that separates it from the form called an apostrophe is The speaker betrays something about him or herself. What's the speaker betraying? He doesn't want her smiling at others. Or, if she does smile, she wants the way she smiles at him to be different than the way she smiles at others. She wants her appreciation, he wants her appreciation for the necklace to be different than the appreciation for, here's a nice new marker. Because she treated them both the same. This grew. What's the this refer to?
Jealousy.
Kind of. It's all of the above. She kept doing what she was doing. Is there anything objectively wrong with her approach? No. No. What is wrong? His jealousy. Jealousy is always born out of what? What does it always tell us about the person who's jealous? Louder? Insecurity. I like something. So it gets pushed aside by, no, it's not my fault, it's a fault in you. This grew. I gave commands. Then all smiles stopped together. There she stands, as if alive. What are we meant to infer? What commands? Gino, go take care of the missus. That's pretty much it. Kill her. And look, now she looks like she's alive. Bruised and battered, head crushed. We don't know how she died, but no, she looks in the prime, full flush of life. She even has a little blush on her cheeks, indicating that blood's pumping. Will you please rise? So they've taken a seat. He's pulled aside the curtain, talked about my last duchess. What does last, what may last imply? Could have been more before. Okay. What else might it imply? Like, my last wife, my last boyfriend, there's almost, I'm not saying there is, there's almost an indication of, and I'm looking for a new one. Okay? Well, please your eyes, we'll meet the company below then. I repeat, the Count, your master's known munificence is ample warrant that no just pretense of mine for dowry will be disallowed. Munificence, generosity. So what have we just been told in those 2 or 3 lines? What's the context of the entire poem or the entire monologue? What word did he give that gives us the context? Dowry. We don't do dowries in the United States anymore. Okay? Would have been nice if my wife had brought a dowry to our marriage. I'm glad I didn't have to pay a dowry for my daughter to get married. What's a dowry? It's the inheritance, essentially, that the woman brings to the marriage. In other contexts, it's called the bride price. It's not what the husband pays for the bride. It's what the bride's father pays to get her out of the house, you know. Though his fair daughter's self, as I avowed at starting, is my object. So why did he bring up the Count's known munificence? He's not cheap. He's not a spendthrift. This guy throws money around like it grows on trees. And so he's saying, my requirements for the dowry will not be disallowed. All right? But that's not really important. I'm not really marrying her for the dowry. Why? It's his daughter's fair self that is my object. Nay, we'll go together down, sir. What's the nay tell us? Remember, dialogue often has stage directions, as we saw with Hamlet and with the other plays. Nay, we'll go down together, sir. That implies the person listening, person being spoken to, has gotten up and started down the stairs. Why? Okay, we're not told. It's embedded, though. It's implied, and we are meant to infer what's happening. Why does the guy try to get up and go down before the speaker? What's going on in the hearer's mind? Okay, so if this guy's a murderer, the guy's speaking to him, is that what you meant? What's going on in the hearer's mind? If he's not put together, damn, he killed his last wife. And what is he there for? This count is getting ready to marry the daughter of the hearer's boss. So what do you think the hearer is attempting to do? Warning, warning, warning. Don't marry ex-murderer with the beautiful art, or whatever the case is. No, we'll go down together. Why? Because he knows. The Count knows what he's thinking. Nay, we'll go together down, sir. Notice Neptune, though. Taming a seahorse, thought a rarity, which Claus of Innsbruck struck for me. So they're making their way down, and he does what? He points out another piece of art. This one's a sculpture. Why? Why the emphasis on art? Why the emphasis, the naming of the artist? Frau Pandolf, you know. What does this guy really want? This Count. Watch the film, 1980. Helena Bonham Carter and lead character, can't remember his name. He died recently. Well, we think he died. He went missing in the San Bernardino Mountains during the first big blizzard that hit California in January. Hasn't been seen or heard from since. He went hiking and got caught by it. Man, I can't remember his name. He's a great actor. Room with a View, okay? Based on a Forster novel. And there's a scene in it where Helena Bonham Carter's character tells her affiancé, her intended husband, played by Daniel Day-Lewis, a very nerdy, uptight character, you don't know what a real woman is. You don't know what a real woman is for, she says. You want a piece of art. You want something to stick on the mantle and to be able to appreciate it. That is this guy. The implication is, well, there's my dead previous wife. Oh, look at the beautiful sculpture. And there's a spot there for maybe my dead next wife, you know. Okay? Go from there to God's Grandeur, page 740 in the 11th edition, 929 in the 10th edition, by Gerard Manley Hopkins. Hopkins was a Catholic priest. By the way, I should mention, on a quiz or exam, if it asks for the author, whole name. If the author is known by 3 names, give all 3 names. Gerard Manley Hopkins. I can't tell you the number of students I've said who've put down Gerard Manley. Manley's not his last name. Or Manley Hopkins. That's not what he ever went by, okay? Anyways. So, God's grandeur. What does the word grandeur mean? And it's not grandeur, it's grange, like DG together. Grandeur. What is grandeur? We don't use it. We do not use that word anymore. It means majesty. it means glory, it means kind of awesomeness, okay? So this is a sonnet, and you've read about sonnets in the introduction to poetry and all that kind of stuff. Just very briefly, two different kinds of sonnets. There's the Italian sonnet and the English or Shakespearean sonnet. The structure of the Italian sonnet, they both have 14 lines, okay, is generally, you have an octave and a sestet. The octave, sestet, not sest, test. The octave first 8 lines, sestet's the last 6 lines, okay? The beginning of line 9, you have what's called the volta, which means a turn or change in emphasis. It often begins with but, nor, yet, now, etc. Okay? An English or Shakespearean sonnet, again, still 14 lines, but it's composed of 3 quatrains, 3 4-line rhyming stanzas, okay, and then a final couplet. Shakespeare often includes this volta idea, a shift in emphasis, but the way his stanzas usually work is, one idea, a second idea, a third idea, summation, therefore, conclusion, okay? Hopkins doesn't do that, necessarily. The world is charged with the grandeur of God. Notice, it's a short, simple, declarative statement. He's not saying it might be, it is charged. What does charged mean?
Filled with.
Louder?
Filled with.
Filled with, like electrical charge. Okay? So if it's charged with the grandeur of God, then what should one be able to do? If I brought in a coil, not like a Tesla coil, but an automobile coil, and I plugged it into an electrical source so that you had an electrode, would it be a smart thing to go up and touch that coil? No, it wouldn't, because you'd get shocked. Okay? It's charged, in other words, like a battery charge. So it's charged with this majesty, this glory, this awesomeness of God. Cool. It will flame out like shining from shook foil. Shook foil doesn't have to be golden foil. It could be any kind of foil. It could be silver, it could be tin, aluminum, etc. Take a piece of aluminum foil, go out in the sun and shake it. What do you see? Ooh, sparkles. Because it's like sparkles. That's what's implied. What's the it? The grandeur of God will flame out. That is, it will burst forth like shook foil. It gathers to a greatness like the ooze of oil crushed. And I think there's an image there, not of, your gloss tells you, olives crushed in their oil. Not like, crushing olive oil like this. I'm pretty sure, well, this I am sure of, olives used to be crushed like wine used to be pressed. Wine grapes. Barefoot. Big old ton or vat. People wash their feet, get them clean, and then you throw all the grapes in, or olives, and walk around. And crush them and crush them and crush them. And then that gets filtered, etc. Okay? It gathers to a greatness. In other words, it builds. Why do men then now not reck his rod? Short, single-syllable words. What does it mean to wreck his rod? Not W-R-E-C-K, like breaking it. We only use that word today, if we use it at all, in this sense. Reckon. Okay? Or a reckoning. There's a famous line in Shakespeare that refers to, it's usually taken to be a referral to, the death of Christopher Marlowe, who had a great reckoning in, it was like a pub bedroom. He was killed in a bar fight. Some people say, no, it was a political assassination. We won't go there. So, the root of it is this. What's it mean to reckon something? I reckon it's okay to do that. It's better than I guess. It's my estimation. It's my thought, my consideration. So it's thinking, it's considering, it's meditating. Why do men then now not wreck his rod? Now, your gloss says, wreck his rod, obey God. Okay, possibly. Wreck, consider his rod. Spare the rod and spoil the child, the Proverbs writer says. Meaning, God's judgment. Why don't they think about what's coming? And we get an example, I think, of what the speaker means about people not reckoning God's judgment, or the great reckoning, as judgment is often called. Generations have trod, have trod, have trod. Why the repetition? Louder? Okay, repetition is powerful. It's emphatic. What else? Generations. One generation treads, another generation treads, another generation treads. What else? When you walk, do you take one step and... No, you take another. You trod and trod and trod. All is seared with trade. Bleared, smeared with toil. What does it mean to sear something? This isn't S-E-E-R, like a sayer or there's a kind of linen suit, seersucker suit. I have no idea where that one comes from. It's a term generally used with cooking. What is it? You sear a steak. How do you sear a steak? You heat the griddle up, or the skillet, or the grill. Okay, go away, Siri. I'm not asking you a question. You heat it up really hot, and you drop that meat on, and what immediately happens? It does more than brown. It chars. Okay? But it chars an image of the grill. You flip it over, and you get those X marks from the grill. So it's like a brand. It burns. All is seared with trade. What's all? The world. The world is burned or marked, branded with trade. What's the speaker saying? Everything has become a commodity. Everything has become an item of exchange. Give me money, you get this. Okay? What's the oldest profession? Sex, supposedly. Hookers are the first, workers for money. What gets sold for money? Sex. All is seared with trade, bleared, smeared with toil. What do blear and smear mean? Smear is pretty easy. Take one of these, do this, and then I just smeared it. Bleared, like bleary-eyed. You ever woken up in the morning and you can't quite wake up and your eyes are all, and you're sitting there and you wash them out and it's still, maybe it's just me in 61, okay? I'm not getting much reaction there. Bleared and smeared with what? Toil. How do your vision get smeared or bleared with toil? Maybe you've never had this happen. And if you haven't, you need to go work an honest, hard day's manual labor where you have sweat constantly pouring in your eyes. And you're sitting there doing this, trying to rewire an electrical outlet where you do want to be able to see clearly if you haven't killed the power. I've done that before. I had to rewire an outlet, without killing the power because you need to know which lead is hot. Okay? And wears man's smudge and shares man's smell. Man's smudge. Not literally man. Humanity's smudge and smell. Again, what's doing the wearing? All. The whole freaking world. Everything. Okay? becomes something that can be bought and sold. Get on eBay. Look, people buy the stupidest things. Facebook Marketplace, same kind of thing, okay? The soil is bare now, nor can foot feel being shod. Why is the soil bare? Is it winter? Okay, possibly. What else? Why did the United States suffer the Great Dust Bowl of the mid-1930s? 2 reasons: drought and overuse. If you have a plot of ground and you plant a garden and you reap the produce from that garden and you pull all the vegetable material, the plants, out after they're done producing, and you do that again next year and the next year and the next year and the next year and the next year, eventually that soil will not grow anything. That soil will be considered dead. What do you have to do to get that soil alive again? You have to put more organic matter back into it, more dead plant matter. Till it into the soil. Okay? So, a basic principle of agriculture is you have to let land lie fallow. The Old Testament has laws about it. It's like every 7 years, let the field lay fallow. That is, let the weeds grow. Till those back into the ground, and the next year, you're going to have a great harvest. But now, we're told, the soil is bare. Why? Too much trade. It's been killed. Nor can foot feel being shod. The speaker is saying, nobody goes out into the natural world in a natural state. I don't mean naked, but you could go there if you wanted to, without shoes. How many of you go around like barefoot all the day during the summer or spring, etc.? When I was a little kid, out of school, we went barefoot, again, 50 years ago, we went barefoot all the time in the summer. Hardly ever wore shoes. Go to the street, walk down to the store, barefoot, no shoes required. We could go into stores, no shoes, no shirts, okay? Now, everything is like this room. There's not other than you and me, there's not a single natural thing in this room. I looked around earlier and I said, there's not even a damn piece of wood. I don't even have a pin. Well, leather wallet. The lighting's not natural. The air is not natural. It's all controlled. This isn't. That's what the speaker's getting at. But remember, go back to the first line. Everything, the world is charged with the grandeur of God. And for all this, here's the volta, nature is never spent. For there means despite. Despite all this, nature is never spent. Right now, of course I don't. So what does it mean, spent? I've got plastic. That's all I ever have. You have money in your wallet. You give it to somebody else. Thank you. I'll take this in return for that dollar bill. What? I've spent it. I no longer. Oh, it's equal, man. We're all communists today, so it's. So, for all this, all what? Everything the speaker has just said. Despite all this trade, all the searing and blearing and smudging, etc., nature's never expended. It's never used up. Modern environmentalists would disagree with this entirely. They would say, we're going to kill the world. We're going to have too many people. We're going to run out of food and water, et cetera, et cetera. Hopkins is saying, nope. Why? There lives the dearest freshness deep down things. And we would probably say, He needs a preposition. In deep down things. And I think what he's getting at, what he means is, or what he's implying is, what do we have to do to experience, go back to line 1, that grandeur? Just scrape the surface a little bit. And you'll see that freshness. You'll experience that freshness. And he's going to give an example. There lives the dearest freshness, deep down things. And though the last lights off the black west went, O morning at the brown brink eastward springs. Now, west is capitalized. Did not point this out to my first class. And I don't think that's only because it's a cardinal point. North, east, south, west. In Britain, in England, and this is still used, it's not used as much today, but it is still used. If someone's about to die, they are described as going west. There's a reason why in the Lord of the Rings, Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, when people are leaving Middle Earth, they're going west. It's metaphorical for they're going to a new life. And I don't mean, like Key West or Florida or something like that. They're going outside this realm, this world, to another realm. Okay? So, though the last lights off the black west went. It's a metaphor, right? Sunrise in the east, sunsets in the west. Right after sunset, about 7:30, 7:45 our time now. I think sunset's around 7:30 now. You can still see what? Off in the west. There's light. It might be almost daylight light. And then you turn and look straight up above you and it's dark. And you look towards the east and it's really dark. Okay? Keep looking towards the west and it's going to get darker and darker and darker and darker and darker. So once the last light is gone, what? So the speaker's saying, let's say this is west. And it gets darker and darker and darker and darker. Think metaphor. Don't think literal. What is this? This is your proverbial tunnel. And it's a black hole. There's nothing, no reason, no purpose. Life just sucks and then you die. The speaker is suggesting what's happening back here. And though the brown brink eastward springs. Brown. Why? If the sun has gone completely beyond the horizon and it's starting its journey, metaphor again because the sun isn't moving, it starts its journey under the earth. What starts to happen over in the east? It's less dark than it was. So, how do you see that? What must you do? Turn. What's a two-syllable word that means turn around? Only used today, only in a religious context. Repent. You're going this direction. It's just darkness and death. Well, maybe turn around. Maybe look where there's not darkness, and lo and behold, what? It's not as dark. Cue the little Orphan Annie song. What will always come up tomorrow? The sun will come up tomorrow. Oh, morning at the brown brink eastward springs. In other words, death leads to rebirth. Winter, spring. Why? Because the Holy Ghost over the bent world broods with warm breast and with bright wings. Opening of the book of Genesis. And the Spirit of God hovered over the face of the deep. And it's still doing it, according to Hopkins. So, the Holy Ghost over the bent world. Why is the world described as bent? Round, right? more than that. Bent also means not straight. If you ever had a bicycle and you got hit by somebody, whether a car or another bike, and you got hit in one of the tires, one of the wheels, sometimes that wheel got knocked what's called out of true. Or if you have a bicycle now, or you see one parked on campus sometime, this would be fun to do. Just kidding. Get a wrench and go up to that tire, one of the bicycle tires, and loosen a bunch of the spokes. You know, because the tire looks like this, and you have the hub in the middle, and you've got all these spokes, and the spokes actually aren't just straight. They go like that. What are those spokes doing? What is the purpose of those spokes? It's not just to hold the hub so that you can have the axle there. It's to keep that rim true. That is, straight. You loosen a bunch of those spokes and it'll warp. Why? Because some of them will be tight and others won't. The ones that won't be tight, it'll pull in that direction. Loosen all the spokes. For example, if you're looking at the wheel like this, loosen all the spokes on this side. Keep all these tight. And it's going to go grip all on this side. It's bent, therefore. Okay? So the speaker, by using bent, is implying also the world is no longer true. It's no longer correct. It's no longer upright. So the Holy Ghost bends over it, or broods over it, with warm breasts and with bright wings. What's the image? Like a hen over its chicks and eggs. And what does the hen do? It births. It brings birth. It brings life out of that. Okay? Go from there to this one. Not going to read because we don't have time. Read it on your own. Read it aloud. It's meant to be read aloud. Why? Because it doesn't make any sense. Lewis Carroll, real name Charles Lutwidge Dodgson, on the quiz or exam, either name is fine, but don't say Lewis Dodgson or Charles Lutwidge Carroll. It's Lewis Carroll or Charles Lutwidge Dodgson. Carroll wrote nonsense verse. Alice in Wonderland, Through the Looking Glass. They're all nonsense. Okay? But, like Hamlet's madness, there's a method in it. In other words, you look a little deeper, and there is, in those works, there is meaning. There is no meaning in this poem. Why? What's a brillig? What's a slithy? What's a tove? What does mimsy and borogoves mean? What are momraths and outgrabe? Nobody knows. But here's where there is sense to that. Each one of those words fits a particular part of speech. That is, there's a lot of nonsense words, but some of those nonsense words are adjectives, and some are adverbs, and some are nouns, and some are verbs. And it's very clear. Grammatically, this thing makes perfect sense. Meaning-wise, we don't know at all what it means. I mean, there are lines that make a lot of sense. Beware the jabberwock, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch. That makes sense, other than, what the hell's a jabberwock? But he took his vorpal sword in hand, long time the manxome foe he sought, so rested he by the tumtum tree, and stood a while in thought, and as an uffish thought, etc., etc. One of the things Carroll is most known for are these portmanteau, that's a U, portmanteau words. You might have noticed every now and then, like every day, I'm talking and I jam two words together because my brain is moving faster than my mouth, or my mouth is one of the two. My mouth is moving faster than my brain. And I'll start to say one word and I'll finish with another word, just jammed together. That's portmanteau. We have all kinds of these words in English. Anyone or anyone. Something or something. Okay? We have all kinds of combinations. Portmanteau is the exact same thing. The problem is, we don't know what Carroll meant by them. And that's probably because Carroll didn't mean anything by them. He's just playing with sounds. Okay? So, we won't say anything else about that one. Turn to 780, 781. 2 sonnets by Shakespeare. You got descriptions of sonnets, bottom at 778, rhyme scheme and all that kind of stuff. Poetic forms. So 2 sonnets by Shakespeare. Now, one comment about these before we get into them. The first sonnet is addressed to / about a man, a young man, a good-looking young man. Shakespeare wrote 154 sonnets. Generally speaking, the first 126 are about the speaker's relationship with, male speaker, relationship with a young man. Generally, the person is described, and I'll use this abbreviation, as the golden-haired youth, GHY, okay? Sonnets 127 to 154 are generally about or to the dark lady, a black woman, okay? And what the entire sonnet sequence is about is the speaker's relationship with the man and the woman and the relationship of the golden-haired youth with the dark lady. Okay? A lot of contemporary critics, contemporary last 30 or 40 years, want to read these sonnets entirely as a homosexual affair between the speaker and the golden-haired youth. I think they're crazy because there's a sonnet, we're not reading it, there's a sonnet where the speaker describes the creation of the golden-haired youth and says, nature in making you added something to you that doesn't fulfill my purpose. And he actually uses the verb or the phrase, nature pricked thee out. Nature gave the person a prick. To my purpose, nothing, but then goes on and says, therefore let thy treasure's use be women's pleasure, and let your soul be my pleasure. So I think what's being distinguished is sexual, erotic love, and platonic love. And the speaker, my reading, the speaker and the golden youth have this platonic love. The dark lady and the golden-haired youth have a sexual love. Okay? And so you get all these permutations of the speaker's feelings, the golden-haired youth's feelings, the dark lady's feelings. So, this is addressed to the young man. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? By the way, this is always included in, 100 best loved love poems. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. So we get the setting. Should I compare you to a summer's day? I don't know, let's think. Let's think about that. You're more lovely and more temperate. What does temperate mean? Even-keeled, right? Because summer can be really hot. Murfreesboro, it can't be really cold. It just, coldest day I can remember my 30 years of living in Murfreesboro was one August, 10 years ago. It got down to 54. And it was like, I've died and gone to heaven. Because this was after a bunch of 100-degree days. In England, okay, Shakespeare's living in London when he wrote this, and he's living during a period called the Maunder Minimum. That was a period of about 150, 200 years in England, actually it's around the world, where the temperatures were cooler than normal. It had everything to do with the solar cycle. For about 150, 200 years, there were vastly, vastly reduced sunspots on the sun. People had started looking at sunspots beginning with Galileo. I think it was Galileo. And what modern climatologists never talk about with global warming is the cycle of the sun. So during that roughly 150 to 200 year period, northern hemisphere is where this affected more than the south. Temperatures were cooler. It was known to snow in England in June, okay, during this period. It's sometimes also called the Little Ice Age. But there's another period in the Middle Ages, also called the Little Ice Age. That one was caused by volcanic eruption in Iceland. So, different times. Thou art more lovely and more temperate. London can be, I've been in London twice. I've been in London many times for a month over the summer. And 2 of those times broke all-time temperature records. One time it was 99 the day we left, and the other time was 101. Last year, I think they hit 104, all right? But I've also been in London before when the average temperature's been about 55 or 60 degrees. Wouldn't that be nice here? It's, August. So, rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. May, beginning, leading to summer, okay? And summer's lease, the end date, is all too short. Summer doesn't end, what's it called? There's 2 different dates for like spring and summer. The equinox date for spring is March 22nd, but meteorological spring is earlier than that. Similarly, meteorological beginning of summer is earlier than June 21st. Meteorological fall for London or England is earlier than September 22nd. Fall has begun, usually in England by the end of August. Leaves are already falling. Okay? They often fall here because of the heat, not because of the time of the year. And summer's lease hath all too short a date. In other words, we didn't get much summer. If there's one thing the Brits hate, it's if they don't get enough hot weather. I won't go there. Anyways, sometime too hot eye of heaven shines, etc., and often is gold complexion dimmed, clouds. And every fair from fair sometime declines, by chance or nature's changing course or trim. Fair from fair. Everything that's beautiful, every fair, from beauty declines. There's the Carpe Diem kind of image. Not seize the day, but if it's beautiful today, it's probably not going to be tomorrow. But what makes the decline happen? By chance? Freak event, right? Or nature's changing course untrimmed. Untrimmed. Shakespeare's using trimmed in a way we only use in 2 instances. And they both have to do with holidays, and one is in November and one is in December. Thanksgiving dinner and all the trimmings refers to turkey surrounded with all the other stuff. That's the trimming. It's the ornamentation around the turkey. Turkey gets, the spotlight, so to speak. The other one, the Christmas tree. When you trim the tree. It doesn't refer to cutting branches. It refers to putting ornaments on it. But this isn't trimmed, it's untrimmed. So how do you untrim Thanksgiving dinner? You clear away the table. How do you untrim a Christmas tree? You remove the ornaments. How do you untrim beauty? Time. Nature's changing course. The other day I had drawn up here and written Earth in the moon, and everything from the orbit of the moon down to Earth is sublunary. And that means changing, impermanent. But notice the volta, the turn, switch of emphasis. So everything we've been told about so far is what? Summer's lease hath all too short a date. Summer has strong winds. Summer has hot sun, cold sun. It's all in flux. It's all changing. But thy eternal summer shall not fade. If it's eternal, it's what? Automatically. Okay, eternal, out of time. And if it's out of time, unchanging. If you're standing outside of time, time has no effect on you. What is it that causes us to fall apart and break down? Us people, us things, us mountains, us rocks, us oceans. You know, we're told that several million years ago, where we are right now was an inland sea. I can go out to the creek behind my house and pull out seashells. I can go show you fossils of sea creatures in the limestone on my property because it was a sea, all right? But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest. The beauty that you now have will be what? In that eternal summer. Still beautiful. Nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. And there's a pun there. Because what happens as you get older? Lines, wrinkles. So, take that image and extend it to eternity. If you grow older, eternally, forever, what are you eventually going to become? Just one big giant wrinkle, right? If wrinkles come with age, when in eternal lines, to time thou growest. So pun, wrinkles, and what else? These lines. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. So, people have still got to breathe. Humanity has to live. And as long as they have eyes that see, that doesn't mean just this kind of see. It means let him who has eyes see, let him who has ears to hear, to perceive, to understand. They'll perceive and understand what? That as long as this poem lives, as long as we're smart enough to read it, what do we do to the person being described? We give life to that person. We've just resurrected that person. We've been, by reading it, the brown light that on the eastward springs. That person is now alive again. Okay? My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. And what Shakespeare does with this one, so the first one is about the golden-haired youth. This is about the dark lady. And what Shakespeare does is he takes the blazon, we talked about the blazon with To His Coy Mistress, where the guy is describing the girl that he wants to sleep with. He'll give 100 years to her forehead and eyes, 200 for each breast, and 30,000 to the rest. So he's cataloging what he considers beautiful. Blazon does that. Shakespeare takes that idea and flips it on its head. Why? Because he's going to take the whole sonnet tradition and flip it on its head. In that sonnet tradition, here's an example of one from English, sonnet sequence called Astrophil and Stella. Astra, what does that mean? Star, Phil, lover, Stella, star. So star, lover, and star. In that sonnet tradition, what the speaker of the poems does is raises his girlfriend, his lover, his mistress, whatever, to the level of a goddess. Always this happens. Okay? Shakespeare is going to say, line 12, my mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. She's not a goddess. Because he says, I grant I never saw a goddess go. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. And using walks and treads in that kind of connection, some critics have interpreted that to mean his mistress is what? a hooker, a streetwalker. And the implication is, last two lines, and yet by heaven I think my love as rare as any she belied with false compare. She is belied with false compare. Sir Philip Sidney's girlfriend, so to speak, in this poem, isn't real. She's an image. She's a fantasy. She's an ideal. Try and curl up in bed in the winter with an image of fantasy ideal. Not going to keep you warm. His mistress, flesh and blood. Okay? And everything else in the stanzas, I'm not going to read it because we're out of time. He's taking all the standard images of beauty and inverting them. All right? Okay. We'll stop there. I might say a couple things about this on today's Monday. We'll start Ode on a Grecian Urn on Wednesday. I'll come back just for like 5 minutes. A couple more things about my mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. We'll do the two odes and hopefully get to the first poem by Robert Frost on Wednesday. I will put up a quiz today for the background and stuff about poetry and probably the poems through today on the syllabus. Right? I'll put it up today. It'll be due probably Wednesday or Thursday. Thanks. Have a good day.